My wife's best friend knocked on my door in tears, then asked one question. The knock came just before sunrise, the kind of knock that carried fear instead of patience. It echoed through the silent house like a warning, pulling me from a restless sleep. I wasn't expecting anyone. My wife had been away for 3 days on what she called a wellness retreat with her closest friend, and I was trying to convince myself that the strange feeling in my chest was only loneliness. But when I opened the door, everything changed. Standing there was my wife's best friend, her face pale, her eyes swollen from endless crying, her hands trembling so badly she could barely keep herself standing. Before I could understand what was happening, she looked at me with heartbreaking desperation and silently begged for hope. In that moment, I realized that some questions have the power to destroy everything you thought you knew. If you believe in kindness, forgiveness, and second chances, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone you care about, and subscribe to Shadow of Kindness. Your support helps these emotional stories reach more hearts around the world. I had always believed my marriage was built on trust. My wife Emily and I had spent 8 years building a quiet life together. We were never the loud couple who posted perfect pictures online or made dramatic promises. We simply loved each other through ordinary days, believing that ordinary love was enough. Her best friend, Sophie, had been part of our lives almost from the beginning. She was cheerful, thoughtful, and always treated us like family. She knew our happiest memories and our deepest struggles. Never once had I imagined that she would become the person standing at my doorstep looking completely broken. She stepped inside without saying much. Her hands refused to stop shaking, and she looked around the house as though every photograph on the wall reminded her of something painful. I offered her water, but she barely touched the glass. It was obvious that whatever had happened had left her carrying a burden far heavier than words could describe. Finally, after several long moments, she looked into my eyes with tears streaming down her face. The only thing she managed to ask was whether I truly knew where Emily had gone. That question struck me harder than I could explain. Of course I knew where my wife was, or at least I thought I did. She had told me about the retreat weeks earlier. She said she needed time to relax, recharge, and reconnect with herself after months of stress. I encouraged her to go because I loved her enough to believe that sometimes people need space. I packed her suitcase, kissed her goodbye, and promised everything would be waiting exactly as she left it. But now doubt slowly crept into every memory. Sophie's silence spoke louder than any explanation. She wasn't trying to accuse anyone. She wasn't trying to create drama. She looked like someone who had been carrying a terrible secret for too long and had finally reached the point where remaining silent hurt more than telling the truth. As morning sunlight filled the living room, she slowly revealed pieces of a story that seemed impossible to believe. There had never been a wellness retreat. Emily had told Sophie to cover for her. She had planned a trip with someone else, someone she had known through work for months. Sophie had argued with her before she left. She begged Emily not to destroy her marriage over temporary excitement. She reminded her about the promises she had made and the life waiting at home, but Emily refused to listen. Sophie had spent 3 sleepless nights hoping Emily would come to her senses. Instead, she received one final message saying she wasn't coming back yet because she needed more time to think. That message shattered whatever hope Sophie still had. She could no longer watch an innocent man continue living inside a beautiful lie. I sat there unable to breathe normally. Every small detail from the previous month suddenly began connecting like pieces of a puzzle I never wanted to solve. The late meetings, the unexplained smiles while reading messages, the growing distance between us. I had blamed work stress. I had blamed myself. I had never blamed the one person I trusted most. Pain has a strange way of changing time. Minutes felt like hours as I walked through rooms filled with memories that suddenly looked different. The dining table where we celebrated anniversaries. The couch where we dreamed about having children. The hallway where we danced together one rainy evening because the power had gone out. Every memory remained beautiful, yet everyone now carried the weight of uncertainty. What surprised me most wasn't my anger. It was Sophie's guilt. She cried because she believed she had failed both of us. She felt responsible for not telling me sooner. She admitted she had hoped Emily would return before any permanent damage was done. She had convinced herself that protecting a friendship meant giving someone one last chance to make the right decision. Instead, every passing day only made the truth heavier. Looking at her, I realized she wasn't the villain of this story. She was another person whose heart had been broken by someone she loved. The following days became some of the longest of my life. Friends noticed something had changed, but I wasn't ready to explain. I continued going to work, smiling politely, and pretending everything was normal. Yet every evening I returned to an empty house where silence echoed louder than words ever could. Then something unexpected happened. Sophie began checking on me, not because she wanted forgiveness or sympathy, but because she genuinely worried I might lose myself in the pain. She dropped off homemade meals, reminded me to eat, encouraged me to spend time outside, and quietly listened whenever I needed someone nearby. She never criticized Emily or tried to justify what had happened. She simply chose compassion during a moment when everyone else seemed to disappear. Little by little, I realized that kindness often arrives wearing the face of someone carrying their own wounds. Weeks later, Emily finally returned. She looked exhausted, uncertain, and nothing like the confident woman who had left. Life has a way of humbling people when fantasy collides with reality. The excitement she had chased had already fallen apart. The person she believed would make her happier had disappeared the moment responsibility appeared. She returned not because everything worked out, but because everything collapsed. I listened quietly as she tried to explain the choices that had led her away from our marriage. Every sentence sounded like someone searching desperately for reasons after making decisions without thinking about consequences. I could see regret in her eyes, but regret cannot erase pain already given to another heart.